what do we want to be responsible for in terms of the rules that we want to live by? Mark Manson talked a lot about emotions and how emotion drives some of many decisions by people. But where do we take responsibility for emotions? As human beings, we can be angry, we can be sad, we can be frustrated, depressed. We go through all this range of emotions. It's a kind of a normal human thing to go through. But the real question is about your awareness around those. So in other words, are your emotions totally driving you, or can you in fact take responsibility for how you are responding to those emotions so that they're actually not driving you, so that you can step back from it and go, I feel the anger, but I'm going to take responsibility for how I manage that anger. I can feel sad, I can feel frustrated, I can feel all those emotions. And it's not that you should hide or ignore those feelings. It's, can you step back and actually manage those emotions as opposed to let them drive or manage you, if they're going to take over your thought process, your actions. And that is a very difficult thing to do. And it's easy to get trapped in those emotions. And so I bring that up around, what are you responsible for? And the 4 agreements are really a layer of responsibility. And then as well as the awareness of what is happening with you emotionally is one area where you can be responsible. And actually, I guess that's part of the own, when we talk about mindset matters, when we talk about personal or professional development, how are you reacting and how are you handling those emotions in certain situations? You want to expand on that?
I do. And one of the things that Mark Manson said in his podcast was, there are no bad or good emotions. There's only emotions. There's only feelings. It's what action we put, or what intensity or intention we put on that, based on our history, based on our values, based on our views of the world. And if we put a negative or positive spin on something, then we're going to react emotionally. And one of the things I love about the word emotion is it's energy in motion. Emotion, energy in motion. So when I talk to my clients about emotions, generally I try and change it into the word feelings. Because when it's energy in motion, there's really only 2 emotions. There's love and there's fear. Back to your point, most of us are driven by fear when we're reacting out of anger or scarcity or whatever. And then if we're in joy or abundance or appreciation, gratitude, we're coming from love. So if we break down the energy in motion into 2, maybe, and this is one of my rules, is that I'm either acting out of fear, or I'm acting out of love. And if I'm acting out of fear, then I can get the feedback and I can identify, hopefully, what it is that I'm in the charge about. If I'm acting from love, that one's much happier and much kinder and a much softer place in my body. But the 2 ways of being is really important. Energy and motion, I think, is really interesting, and not to put a spin on it, whether positive or negative. Feelings just are. They're just feedback.
Well, it is interesting, though, that if you're going to have, okay, so when we look at rules for our life, if we consider that how much trouble we can get ourselves in the emotions, whether it be overreacting because of anger that you kind of feel, or overreacting because of something that happened that you don't trust and you're making up a story. It really is, the rule, I guess, here would be taking responsibility for your actions that are based on emotion. So having the awareness to say, no, I'm not going to buy into that anger, that sadness, that overreaction, that frustration. Is literally the rule being, step back, take a breath, and be more mindful of your reaction, and that it is being driven by an emotion. Now, some will justify being angry and coming off the rails. Okay. And there's lots of times that it feels like that justification is definitely there. And perhaps it is. But if you're going to do that, make sure you realize it is a very conscious choice, as opposed to being reactionary where it's controlling you. There's actually training around anger management for those individuals who get angered, who get triggered frequently or with very seemingly little reason, and they fly off the handle. And I guess the other side of that is being emotionally, like, whether it be sad and drama and tears and, oh my gosh, the world's coming to an end, when really nothing serious has really happened. It's just how we view what's happened. And that is also another rule that you can have, is that you're going to step back and kind of consider how you're viewing the world. What is the filter that you're looking through that's happened? This goes back a little bit to the values conversation. Is it really just somebody who's not aligned with your values, or a situation that you find yourself in that isn't aligned with your values? So where we take responsibility is for how we're actually viewing it. It isn't always the way we see it. No, it's actually always the way we see it. But how about if we change the filter around it? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. And I think when you say change the filter, it takes a sense of emotional resilience and emotional maturity, because it doesn't happen overnight. When we think, and I've reacted negatively, or I'm afraid, or if I pick a fight, or if I'm responding to something you've said or done and I get angry, it's generally because I'm afraid. And if I can get to what I'm afraid of, it softens, whether it's the argument or the discussion or the conversation. But there's always that moment for me of heightened fear. I get terrified that something you've said or done, or that we have said or done, or something in the world, something, sometimes I'll just get really scared. And my emotional maturity and the work that I'm trying to do is to give myself that pause and try not to respond in that moment with so much fear. Because I know when I come across as angry, it's just that I'm afraid.
Well, I think that's an interesting point. And, one of the things we joke about it is I get revved up about politics and some of the decisions that our government makes. And I actually get angry about it. I get really pissed off about it. I can be quite vocal about it, and knowing that I'm being vocal. So I'm picking my spots, but I realize that the underlying reason for all of that, my anger around it, is in fact fear. It is fear for my financial future. It's fear for the future of our grandchildren, our children. It literally is underlying is the fear of the consequences that I have to be at the effect of, and I have no control over, and decisions being made by politicians that I absolutely do not agree with the direction they're going. As a matter of fact, I believe them to be quite incompetent. So the fear of that is the consequences and the price that I would have to pay, my grandchildren would have to pay, whether it be the economic future of this country or our own personal economic future, financial future. So that can get me pretty pissed off. And ultimately understanding what's behind that is really, I'm just fearful. It's nothing personal against our government, just how I feel about what they're doing. And I'm just using that as an example. But to your point, is unpacking what is your fear around when you're feeling angry may be a good tool for you to use, taking responsibility for that. Again, what's the rule that you're going to live by?